My wife wanted half of everything in our divorce, but discovering her shocking honeymoon betrayal proved none of it was ever truly mine. Hey Reddit, if you'd asked me a year ago, I'd have said my life was as close to perfect as it could get. At 29, I wasn't just coasting through, I was thriving. Born and raised in Miami, I was the only child of a family that had built a real estate empire from scratch. My parents weren't your typical rich folks who threw money around for fun. They worked hard for everything they had, and they made sure I respected that. Growing up, I never had to struggle, but I wasn't handed everything on a silver platter either. My dad made me intern at the bottom of the company when I was still in high school. "You'll earn your seat at the table," he'd say, and he meant it. At the time, I thought it was unfair, watching my friends party while I was filing contracts and shadowing meetings. But now I get it. My dad didn't just want me to inherit the business, he wanted me to deserve it. By my late 20s, I had moved from shadowing to actually making decisions. I wasn't the CEO yet, but I was running some big projects, and my dad trusted me with more responsibility every day. My mom was just as invested in my future. She handled the company's PR and branding, and she was the first one to suggest I start networking outside of work. That's how I ended up at the art gala where I met Rachel. Rachel. Even saying her name used to feel like a flex. She was stunning, like model-level stunning. Tall, brunette, with this natural elegance that made everyone around her stop and stare. The first time I saw her, she was standing under one of those fancy chandeliers, holding a glass of wine, laughing at something some guy was saying. She looked like she belonged in a movie scene. I was hooked instantly, and apparently so was she. We started talking, and it felt like we'd known each other forever. She told me she worked in PR, representing fashion brands and influencers, which made total sense. She had this way of carrying herself, always put together, always knowing exactly what to say. I remember thinking, this girl's got her life together. We started dating not long after that, and for a while it felt like I was living in some rom-com. Rachel was everything I thought I wanted, smart, funny, ambitious, and she fit right into the lifestyle my family had built. My mom adored her, and my dad, well, he was a little harder to impress, but even he admitted she was a sharp girl. A year and a half later, I decided to propose. I went all out, private yacht, roses everywhere, live music. It was over the top, but that's just how I do things. Rachel loved it. She cried, said yes, and immediately started planning the wedding of her dreams. The wedding itself was a spectacle. 500 guests, a venue overlooking the ocean, designer everything. Rachel was in her element. She loved attention, the cameras, the way everyone fawned over her. I just went along with it, happy to see her happy. At the time, I didn't think twice about the way she soaked up every ounce of praise. It was part of who she was. She loved being seen, and I loved seeing her shine. After the wedding, my parents gifted us a 2-week honeymoon in Bora Bora. If you've never been, let me just say it's like stepping into a postcard, overwater bungalows, clear blue water, palm trees swaying in the breeze. Our villa had an infinity pool, glass floors where you could see fish swimming beneath, and a private deck where we could just sit and take it all in. It was paradise, plain and simple. The first few days were everything I hoped they'd be. We snorkeled, explored the island, and ate like royalty. Rachel was glued to her phone most of the time, snapping photos and posting them online. She was all about the aesthetic, the hashtags, the perfect couple vibe. I didn't mind. It was her thing, and honestly, I liked showing her off. She looked incredible in every picture, and it felt good to know the world saw what I had. One night we had this insane dinner on the beach. They set up a table right by the water, with candles everywhere, and a private chef cooking for us. Rachel wore this stunning dress that flowed in the wind, and for a moment I just sat there thinking, this is it. This is everything I've ever wanted. She looked up from her phone, she'd been posting obviously, and smiled at me. You know, she said, we're basically everyone's couple goals right now. I laughed, but there was something in the back of my mind that felt off. It was small, barely a blip, but it was there. Like she was more excited about what people thought of our honeymoon than the actual honeymoon itself. I brushed it aside, telling myself I was overthinking. After all, wasn't this exactly what I wanted? A wife who turned heads, a life that looked like it belonged in a magazine, a future as bright as the Bora Bora sun. Everything about the honeymoon seemed perfect. I mean, how could it not? We were in freaking Bora Bora. But as the week went on, little things started to pop up that didn't sit right with me. Nothing major, just enough to make me pause for a second. Rachel was spending way more time on her phone than I expected. We'd be sitting on the deck looking out at the water, and instead of talking or soaking it all in, she'd be glued to her screen, texting, scrolling, or editing photos for Instagram. She'd post these long captions like feeling so blessed to be spending forever with the love of my life, or pinch me, I must be dreaming with my honeymoon goals. People ate it up, of course. Every post got a ton of likes and comments, and Rachel loved it. But after a while, it started to feel like the honeymoon wasn't even about us. It was about how good it looked to everyone else. One afternoon, I tried to bring it up casually. We were lounging by the pool, and she was sitting there with her phone in one hand and a frozen drink in the other. I leaned over and said, "You know, this place is even better if you look at it with your own eyes instead of through a screen." She laughed it off like she always did. "Come on, babe, don't be such a grump. People love seeing what we're up to. It's cute." "Yeah, I get it," I said. "But maybe we could just put the phones down for a bit? It's our honeymoon, after all." She sighed, rolled her eyes, and put her phone face down on the table. "Fine. Happy now?" she said in that joking but not really tone. I let it go because I didn't want to argue, but something about her reaction rubbed me the wrong way. I wasn't trying to ruin her fun, I just wanted to feel like we were actually together. Then there was this thing with the staff. Rachel was super chatty with everyone who worked at the resort, like overly friendly. Don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those guys who gets jealous every time his wife talks to another man. But with Rachel, it was different. She wasn't just polite, she was flirty. She'd laugh a little too hard at their jokes, compliment their accents, and ask way more questions than seemed normal. The first time I noticed it, we were at the beach bar. The bartender, this young guy with a thick French accent, was mixing her a cocktail. Rachel leaned over the counter, smiling, and said, "Wow, you're so good at that. Have you been doing this long?" The guy laughed, clearly enjoying the attention, and started telling her about his background. Rachel hung on every word, nodding and laughing like he was the most fascinating person she'd ever met. I just sat there sipping my drink, feeling like a third wheel. After we walked away, I said, "You seem to be hitting it off with the bartender." She grinned. "Oh, stop, I was just being friendly. You're not jealous, are you?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "It's just, I don't know, maybe tone it down a bit." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive sometimes. Relax." That became her go-to response anytime I brought something up. Relax, like I was the one making things weird. It started happening more and more, whether it was the bartender, the guy at the front desk, or even the snorkeling instructor. Rachel always seemed to find a way to be the center of attention. I told myself it was just her personality. She liked people, and people liked her. But deep down it bothered me. The turning point came about halfway through the trip. We were having breakfast on the villa deck when Rachel mentioned wanting to do a special photo shoot. "I've been thinking," she said, slicing into her tropical fruit platter. "We should hire a professional photographer while we're here, someone who can really capture how beautiful this place is. And us, of course." I shrugged. "We've already taken like 1,000 pictures. What's the point?" "The point is," she said, setting down her fork, "these are memories we'll want to look back on forever. Besides, it's not just for us. Everyone keeps commenting on how amazing the trip looks. It'd be nice to have some professional shots to post." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean for Instagram?" "Don't be like that," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not just for Instagram. It's for us, too." I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I didn't want to argue. "Fine," I said. "If it makes you happy, go for it." That afternoon, she went down to the resort office to book the session. She came back an hour later, all smiles. "I found the perfect guy," she said. "His name's Marco. He's done shoots for a bunch of influencers who've stayed here. He's super talented." "Great," I said, not really paying attention. I figured it was just another one of Rachel's things, something she wanted to do to make the trip feel more special. At the time, I didn't think it was a big deal. This is where it all started falling apart. Right after the first photo shoot we did with Marco, I could feel something was off, but what I didn't realize was how far she'd take it. The day everything unraveled started like any other. Rachel mentioned she was heading out for a solo shoot with Marco. "He has this vision for a sunset series," she said, tying up her hair. "It's going to be gorgeous." I didn't think much of it at the time. We'd already done one photo shoot with him earlier in the week, and she wouldn't stop raving about how talented he was. She even joked about hiring him for other trips in the future. Whatever makes her happy, I thought. Besides, it gave me a chance to relax alone, maybe hit the pool. I wasn't exactly dying to sit around watching Rachel pose for hours. She left around late afternoon, and I didn't see her again until after sunset. When she got back, she was in a ridiculously good mood. "Marco is incredible," she said, kicking off her sandals. "You're going to love these shots. They're some of the best photos I've ever taken." "Can't wait to see them," I said, not even looking up from my laptop. She didn't offer to show me any, which I thought was weird, but I let it slide. Rachel liked to edit her pictures before sharing them with anyone. It was her thing, part of her whole brand. Later that night, we were having dinner when one of the resort staff approached me. "Excuse me," she said, holding out a small USB drive. "These are the photos from your wife's session with Marco earlier. He asked us to deliver them to you." "Oh, thanks," I said, taking the USB. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just figured Rachel must have asked Marco to send over the raw files. I tucked it into my pocket, planning to check it out later. After dinner, Rachel said she was tired and went straight to bed. I stayed up scrolling through my phone and sipping on a soda and eventually remembered the USB. I grabbed my laptop, plugged it in, and started going through the files. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Rachel in a flowy dress, posing on the beach, the sunset behind her. The shots were stunning. No doubt Marco knew what he was doing, and Rachel looked incredible in every frame. But as I kept scrolling, something caught my eye, a photo that didn't quite fit with the others. It was Rachel, but she wasn't posing. She was sitting on a lounge chair, laughing at something or someone just out of frame. The angle was casual, almost candid, like it wasn't meant to be part of the shoot. I frowned, clicked to the next picture, then the next, and the next. Each shot got worse. The laughing turned into leaning. The leaning turned into touching. And then came the photo that made my stomach drop. Rachel mid-kiss with Marco, his hand on her waist. It wasn't some quick peck either. It was intimate, full-on making out. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This couldn't be real, right? Maybe it was a weird angle, a misunderstanding. But as I scrolled further, the pictures made it clear there was no misunderstanding. There were more shots of them kissing, laughing, and even some where they were clearly undressing. My wife, on our honeymoon, with some random resort photographer. The last few pictures were explicit, the kind of thing I never thought I'd have to see. Rachel topless, in what looked like our villa, with Marco standing behind her, his hands all over her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a slap in the face. She didn't even have the decency to sneak around somewhere private. She was doing this in the same place we were supposed to be building memories as newlyweds. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, trying to wrap my head around it. My brain kept cycling through the same questions. Why? How could she do this? What the hell was I supposed to do now? Eventually, I shut the laptop and just sat there in silence. My hands were shaking, and I could feel the rage building in my chest, but I didn't want to wake her up. Not yet. I needed time to think, to figure out how to handle this. Blowing up in the middle of the night wasn't going to solve anything. The next morning, Rachel woke up acting like everything was fine. She was her usual chipper self, chatting about breakfast and asking if I wanted to plan a day of snorkeling. I could barely look at her. Every time I did, all I could see were those pictures. She must have noticed something was off because she eventually asked, "Are you okay? You've been really quiet today." "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile, "just tired." She didn't push it, which honestly made me angrier. If the roles were reversed, I'd be asking 100 questions, trying to figure out what was wrong. But Rachel? She didn't seem to care. She was too busy texting on her phone, probably planning her next post. That night, after she went to bed, I looked through the photos again. This time, I paid closer attention to the timestamps. The first set of explicit photos wasn't from the shoot she'd done that day. It was from 2 days earlier. That meant this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment lapse in judgment. Rachel had been sneaking around with Marco for days. And the worst part, I had no idea how far it went. Were there more photos I hadn't seen? Did they hook up while I was sleeping or when I was off doing something else? My mind was racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept replaying everything in my head, Rachel's weird behavior, the way she laughed a little too hard at Marco's jokes, how she'd been glued to her phone since we got here. All the little red flags I'd ignored were flashing neon now. I knew I had to confront her. This wasn't something I could ignore. Rachel thought she was untouchable, that she could lie to my face and get away with it. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. Rachel was already up by the time I got out of bed. She was sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone like nothing was wrong. I could feel my blood boiling just looking at her, but I forced myself to stay calm. I walked out and joined her, pretending everything was fine. "Morning," I said, grabbing a cup of coffee for myself. "Good morning," she chirped, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. "I was thinking we could do that couples paddleboarding thing today. Doesn't that sound fun?" "Yeah, maybe," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "By the way, I got the photos from your shoot yesterday. The resort dropped off a USB last night." Her face froze for just a split second, so quick that if I hadn't been looking for it, I might have missed it. But I saw it. "Oh, really?" she said, recovering almost instantly. "That's great. Marco's work is amazing, isn't it?" "Yeah, it's interesting," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "You didn't mention you were doing, some extra poses." She laughed nervously. "What do you mean?" I set my mug down and looked her dead in the eyes. "Why don't you tell me what you were really doing yesterday? Or better yet, the day before that too?" Her smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about." "Cut the crap, Rachel," I said, my voice sharper now. "I saw the photos. All of them." Her face turned pale. For a moment she didn't say anything, just stared at me like a deer caught in headlights. Then she tried to backpedal. "Wait, what photos are you talking about? The ones Marco sent? There must be some kind of mistake." "There's no mistake," I snapped, pulling out my phone. I'd copied the photos onto it the night before, just in case. I opened the folder, selected the one of her kissing Marco, and held it up for her to see. "Explain this." Rachel's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to come up with an excuse but couldn't find the words. Finally she said, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? Because it looks like you've been sneaking around behind my back on our honeymoon, no less." "I can explain," she said quickly, her voice shaking. It wasn't planned. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, my voice rising. "So what, you just tripped and fell into his arms? Give me a break, Rachel." "I was confused," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "You've been so distant lately. Always working, always distracted. I felt, I don't know, lonely." "Lonely?" I said, practically shouting now. "We're on our honeymoon. How the hell are you lonely when we're spending every single day together?" She started crying then, full-on sobbing, but I wasn't buying it. "I made a mistake," she said through her tears. "I was stupid. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Far?" I said, narrowing my eyes. "So you admit it wasn't just a kiss?" She froze again, and that told me everything I needed to know. "Unbelievable," I said, shaking my head. "You're disgusting. Please, just listen to me," she begged, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "It didn't mean anything. Marco doesn't mean anything to me." I stood up, glaring down at her. "You know what doesn't mean anything? Your promises, your vows, the whole damn marriage, apparently. Was this your plan all along, Rachel? Marry me for the lifestyle, and then screw around with the first guy who gives you attention? That's not fair," she cried. "I love you." "You don't get to say that to me," I said coldly. "Not after what you've done." Her sobbing got louder, but I wasn't moved. I was done. "You know what, Rachel? I don't give a damn about your excuses. You've shown me exactly who you are, and guess what? I want nothing to do with you." She tried to grab my hand again, her voice shaking. "Please, just listen to me. We can fix this. We can move past it." I yanked my hand away. "Move past it? Are you insane? There's no coming back from this. You disrespected me, our marriage, and everything we were supposed to be building together. You made your choice, Rachel. Now you're going to live with it." I stood up and walked inside, grabbing my phone to call the resort manager. Rachel followed me, still crying and begging. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Making arrangements," I said coldly. "You're out of here." "What? You can't just kick me out," she cried. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I snapped. "Pack your stuff. You're leaving the villa today." She started to argue, but I ignored her, speaking directly to the manager when he picked up. "I'm calling from Villa 14. My wife will no longer be staying with me. I need you to move her to another room, whatever's available in the main building, and make sure she doesn't have access to the villa again." The manager hesitated for a moment, clearly caught off guard. "Of course, sir. I'll arrange it immediately." Rachel's jaw dropped as I hung up the phone. "You're being ridiculous. You can't just throw me out like this." I turned to her, my voice sharp and unwavering. "Watch me." While she packed her things, I took it a step further. I called my dad. He'd always been my go-to in situations like this, calm, calculated, and ruthless when necessary. I laid it all out for him, sparing no detail. He didn't interrupt, but I could hear the anger building in his voice as I talked. When I finished, he let out a long sigh. I knew there was something off about her, he said, but this is a whole new level of disrespect. What do you think I should do? I asked, even though I already had a pretty good idea. You don't leave her a single thing, he said firmly. She's done. Credit cards, access to the company accounts, everything gone. Already working on it, I said. And her flight home? He added without hesitation. Cancel it. I smirked. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. After hanging up, I got in touch with our financial team to make sure every connection Rachel had to my family's money was severed. The credit cards she loved to flash around, canceled. Access to any joint accounts, frozen. Even the card she used for emergencies, gone. When the resort staff arrived to escort her out, she made one last attempt to plead with me. Please, she said, tears streaming down her face. Don't do this. I'll do anything to fix this. Just give me another chance. I crossed my arms and stared at her, unflinching. Fix this? The only thing you can do is leave. Maybe Marco can help you figure out your next move. Her face twisted in anger, the tears suddenly replaced with rage. You'll regret this, she hissed. You'll regret treating me like this. I laughed, shaking my head. The only thing I regret is marrying you. Now get out. The staff led her away, and just like that, she was gone. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. My wife, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, had turned out to be a liar, a cheater, and a complete fraud. But you know what? I didn't feel sad. I felt free. They assured me she was moved to one of the basic rooms in the main building. Nothing fancy, just a bed and a bathroom. The thought of her going from our luxurious villa to a standard room made me laugh. It was fitting, really. She wanted to act like she was too good for me, let her enjoy being just another guest. By the evening, everything was set. Rachel was cut off from my life, financially, emotionally, and physically. I didn't leave any loose ends, but I wasn't done yet. Sure, Rachel was a liar and a cheat, but she didn't pull this off alone. Marco, the slimy resort photographer, had been just as involved. I wasn't about to let him walk away like nothing happened. If he thought he could mess with me and get away with it, he was in for a rude awakening. The morning after I threw Rachel out, I called the resort manager. I figured I'd start with the basics and see if the resort was even aware of what their photographer had been up to. Good morning, the manager said when he picked up. How can I assist you today? I have a problem with one of your employees, I said flatly. Marco, your photographer. There was a long pause before he replied, I see. What seems to be the issue? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. The issue, I said, is that he's been hooking up with my wife behind my back on your property during what was supposed to be our honeymoon. The manager sounded shocked. I don't know what to say. This is the first I'm hearing of any such behavior. Yeah, well, I have proof, I said. Pictures, explicit ones, taken during one of their so-called photo shoots. Do you want me to send them to you, or should I go straight to the resort's corporate office? There was another pause. This one longer. That won't be necessary, he said quickly. Please allow us to handle this matter internally. I assure you we take these kinds of allegations very seriously. Good, I said, because I'm not letting this slide. By the end of the day, the manager had called me back to let me know Marco was being terminated immediately. He will no longer be associated with the resort in any capacity, the manager said, his tone crisp and professional. And we sincerely apologize for the distress this has caused you. Good to hear, I replied. I trust you'll also be ensuring this doesn't happen again with any future guests. Absolutely, he said. This was an egregious violation of our policies, and we are taking steps to ensure it never happens again. It felt like a win, but I wasn't done with Marco yet. Getting him fired was just the first step. This guy had crossed a line, and I wanted to make sure he couldn't pull the same stunt on someone else. That's when I started digging. With the help of a friend back in Miami, I tracked down Marco's Instagram and other social media accounts. It didn't take long to figure out that Rachel wasn't his first special client. His accounts were full of tagged photos from previous guests, mostly women, all gushing about how amazing he was. I even found a few posts that seemed overly familiar. The captions were innocent enough, but the body language in the photos, let's just say it didn't look professional. I decided to reach out to a few of these women just to see if there was a pattern. Most of them didn't respond, but one did. Her name was Lisa, and she had stayed at the resort a few months before me. When I told her what had happened with Rachel, she wasn't surprised. "That guy's a creep," she said. "He kept flirting with me during our shoot, and at one point he even suggested we do some boudoir-style photos." I shut it down immediately, but it was super uncomfortable. Lisa's story gave me exactly what I needed to take things further. I sent her screenshots of Marco's social media posts and asked if she'd be willing to share her experience with the resort's corporate office. She agreed, and within a few days we had a small but damning collection of testimonies from other women Marco had worked with. I forwarded everything to the resort's corporate headquarters, along with a formal complaint detailing my experience. It didn't take long for them to respond. The head of guest relations called me personally, apologizing profusely and assuring me they were conducting a full investigation. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted Marco to feel the consequences of his actions outside the resort too. Using the same evidence I'd gathered, I reached out to a few travel review sites and forums where people talked about their experiences with high-end resorts. I didn't name the resort itself. I didn't want to ruin their reputation, but I made sure Marco's name was out there. The story gained traction quickly. People started sharing it on social media, and before long, Marco's personal accounts were flooded with comments calling him out. It wasn't just about me anymore. It turned out I wasn't the only one who had been affected by his sleazy behavior. Other women started coming forward, sharing their own stories of how he had crossed the line during photo shoots. By the end of the week, Marco had deleted all of his social media accounts. His reputation in the travel photography world was ruined, and as far as I could tell, he was done professionally. Good riddance. Meanwhile, Rachel tried to act like none of this was her fault. She texted me a few days after Marco got fired. "I can't believe you got him fired. That's so extreme." I didn't bother replying. She still didn't get it. She thought she could cheat on me, humiliate me, and walk away without any consequences. But that wasn't how this was going to go. Not for her, and definitely not for Marco. I thought I'd be done with her drama. I'd made it clear that we were over, that there was no coming back from what she'd done. But Rachel wasn't ready to let go. Over the next few days she kept trying to get to me, texts, voicemails, showing up at the villa unannounced. It was a constant barrage of excuses, apologies, and attempts to twist the situation in her favor. The first time she showed up, it was early evening, just after I'd returned from a swim. I was sitting on the villa deck enjoying the peace and quiet when I heard her yelling from outside the gate. "You can't ignore me forever," she screamed. "We need to talk." I stood up, walked over to the gate, and stared at her through the bars. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smudged, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Go back to your room, Rachel," I said coldly. "There's nothing to talk about." "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. I love you, okay?" I shook my head, laughing bitterly. "You don't love me. You love what I can give you." "That's not true," she snapped, her face twisting with anger. "I married you because I love you. You're the one who's throwing everything away." "I'm throwing everything away?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Rachel, you're the one who destroyed this marriage, not me, and now you're dealing with the consequences." She started crying again, her voice desperate. "Please, just let me come back to the villa. We can talk about this. We can figure it out." "No," I said firmly, "you're done here. And if you don't leave now, I'll call security to escort you back to your room." She glared at me, her tears suddenly gone. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "You can't just throw me away like trash." I didn't bother responding. I turned around, walked back inside, and closed the door behind me. That was the last time I spoke to her in Bora Bora. When it was time to leave, I booked myself an earlier flight back to Miami. Rachel, of course, was still trying to reach me, but I ignored every text and call. I wanted nothing to do with her. But while I was focused on getting away from her, Rachel was busy flipping the story. By the time I landed in Miami, I'd started hearing whispers from mutual friends. Rachel was telling everyone that I was the one who ruined the honeymoon. According to her, I was controlling, distant, and even emotionally abusive. She painted herself as the victim, saying I'd abandoned her in Bora Bora and cut her off without warning. Her biggest move was going to her parents. Of course she wanted someone to pay for her flight home. They were wealthy enough to help her, but nowhere near the level of my family. Rachel had told them some sob story about how I'd mistreated her and then left her stranded overseas. Of course they believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was their golden child. But Rachel underestimated one thing. I wasn't about to let her get away with it. The first thing I did when I got back to Miami was meet with my lawyer, James. I gave him every piece of evidence I had, the photos, the texts, the voicemails. He started drafting the divorce papers immediately, making sure Rachel wouldn't get a single cent. Next, I decided to deal with her parents. Rachel thought she could use them as her safety net, but she didn't realize how quickly I could pull the rug out from under her. I called her father directly and asked to meet in person. He sounded wary but agreed. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat as I sat down across from him. "I'm not sure what this is about," he said, his tone defensive. "It's about your daughter," I said, pulling out my phone. "She's been lying to you." Before he could say anything, I showed him the photos. His face turned pale as he scrolled through the images of Rachel with Marco. This can't be real," he stammered. "Oh, it's real," I said flatly. "She cheated on me during our honeymoon, and then lied to you about what happened. She's been trying to spin this whole thing as my fault, but as you can see, that's not the case." He didn't say much after that, just sat there staring at the table, clearly embarrassed. I didn't care. I wasn't there to spare anyone's feelings. I was there to set the record straight. As expected, word spread quickly. Rachel's parents weren't exactly thrilled to find out their daughter had been lying to them, and they started pulling back their financial support. Her friends who had been eating up her victim act began distancing themselves too. Nobody likes being caught on the wrong side of a lie. Rachel, of course, wasn't going down without a fight. She showed up at my lawyer's office the day after she was served the divorce papers, demanding to speak to me. I wasn't there, but James filled me in later. "She thinks she's entitled to half of everything," he said, smirking. "She doesn't realize how airtight your family's setup is." That was the beauty of it. Every major asset, our home, the cars, even the accounts she thought were ours, was under my parents' names. Rachel had no legal claim to any of it, and with the evidence of her infidelity, even her argument for spousal support was dead in the water. When Rachel finally realized this, she was livid. She called me screaming into the phone about how unfair it was. "You're such a coward," she yelled. "You had everything in your parents' names so I wouldn't get anything. That's disgusting." "No, Rachel," I said calmly. "What's disgusting is cheating on your husband and then playing the victim. You wanted independence, remember? Well, now you've got it. Enjoy." She tried to argue, but I hung up. I didn't need to hear anything else. Rachel was officially defeated, and there was nothing she could do about it. The divorce was finalized within a few months. Rachel walked away with nothing. No money, no assets, not even sympathy from the people she thought would support her. Meanwhile, I moved on with my life, focusing on my work and my family. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled it. Rachel made her choices, and she paid the price. As for me, I came out stronger, smarter, and with a much clearer picture of what I truly deserve.